This hangout is on air and alive, or as alive as you can get in cyberspace. So, how are you this morning, Barrett?
I'm doing really well. I'm doing really well, and I love that idea that we're actually all in like this big video game, and we think that we're actually the character. We're doing A, B, left, right. But
Hmm.
really, it's just a character on a screen, and um, we can have fun. We can have fun when we start to realize that.
Exactly, and we can do a lot less damage too, because then we're no longer in that constant defensive posture of protecting our own interests first and worrying about everybody else second. So that is the somewhat devious aspect of living in this material world.
Yeah, and I think these ideas sort of penetrate the collective consciousness of our society as we go, and they're reflected in our media. We have all the Star Trek episodes that have the hologram or the hologram deck, um, and it's like they're stepping into this what seems like a very real situation, and they're going through sometimes these challenging situations, but they also know that it's actually not happening. And I think we start to have that experience here in our daily life where, yeah, sometimes things here seem rough or they feel like they suck. But we can know, like, oh, all right, I don't need to be so bummed out by this because I'm just on the holodeck.
Right, and it's just been in the last 200 plus years that we've begun to awaken to that reality. I mean, prior to that, who knows how long human history exists? I mean, now I've seen estimates of 1.5 million years. I don't know if that's science or pseudoscience or whatever, but nonetheless, this whole grand pageant of human experience was based on not having that one vital little nugget of information.
Mm.
And how many times can you die over and over and over again before you finally look for an alternative
Yeah.
to that kind of an
And
ending?
it's incredible that when we look at that humongous span of time, that we think that our 20, 50, 100 years of it are what really matters. We're so invested in the goings on of the body that I call me. The body that is Barrett, the body that is Chris, the body that you are. Um, but really, how could that have a significant impact on anything? And the answer is sort of like, I would say, two things at once. When we choose kindness in our experience here, that is a lasting impact. Whether or not we actually see a physical change or shift from our experience of that kindness, we're actually, you know, letting go of the ego's hand and we're choosing that hand of love. So it's not, we're not saying this to kind of make you feel bad or insignificant. We're here to make you realize that what you think you are is insignificant, and what you really are is amazing, is eternal, is unending.
Yes, and it's beautiful beyond comprehension. One of the things that pops into my mind throughout the day is that Jesus in the Course references the great rays and says, you will eventually step into that level of awareness where you will see the great rays emanating from every brother and sister you encounter. And that's something that really I find very compelling and very much a thing that I desire to do, is to have that level of vision, to see the spiritual magnificence, to see the Christ within everyone I encounter.
It's a very simple but powerful practice to do that as we go through our day, you know, to realize that everyone that we interact with is Christ, to know that every meeting that we have with anyone is a holy blessing to us. I would just suggest to everyone out there who's watching us and listening to these words that, try to make that your practice today, tomorrow. Just do it for maybe a day or so and just see how you feel. Um, what I find personally as I try to do this is I have trouble doing a whole day. you know, Sometimes I can do it for a half an hour or an hour, But when I'm able to kind of hold that perspective, when I'm able to really see that light and love in everyone, I feel amazing. I feel like my experience is transformed. And I think it begins to give us that glimpse of our true nature and what we really, really are.
Yes, and what we are working toward experiencing as, our entire state of being, instead of in little fragments, as we're hopping from lily pad to lily pad with lions and tigers and all sorts of things pursuing us.
Lions and tigers and bears, oh my.
Absolutely, yes. Well, Barrett, I wonder about this every once in a while, because I've known people who have the appearance of having healed, and then all of a sudden they have a relapse. They go back into uh, a period of exacerbation and deterioration. But in the course, what we've been looking at in the manual for teachers, we look at that idea: is healing certain?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think Jesus really is giving us a new understanding of healing. A lot of times we see healing, we do think about healing of the body. And sure, that is one kind of level, but the ultimate healing is always the healing of the mind. And that is possible for that to happen completely, even as the body is not healing. So there are times where our mind shifts into wholeness, and then things on the physical come to reflect that wholeness. So there can be spontaneous healings, obviously in the story of Jesus and Lazarus. Lazarus was returned from the dead, but then at some point he did die. So it is a very temporary thing. So he had this amazing healing, but he didn't live forever. So I think we can see that no matter what we heal here on the level of physical, it's never going to last. Even if we get cured of some dramatic illness or injury that we have, at some point the body is going to fall apart and be done again. But the good news is that the deeper healing is certain. That healing of the mind, we can't actually lose. Every healing that we have on the level of the mind is kept safe for us and is brought forward. And I think that that's really a summation of the message that Jesus has here in this section.
Well, I think also that we have to be sensitive to, again, rhetoric, because words are symbols, and they're symbols of different ideas or different thoughts. And the idea of death is the cessation of life. And that's what is properly or popularly construed to be. But we have stories from almost every discipline, from every school of spirituality, about people who consciously arrive at the place where they step out of the body and they experience that continuity of being no longer corporeal, no longer attached to a body. And I think that really is, something we have to look at. Are you going to die and go asleep, fall asleep and then come back into a body? Or do you have perhaps a vision of arriving at that point where you recognize, oh, the body isn't really necessary for what I'm supposed to be doing now, and just laying the body down, stepping out of it? And I think that is really what the Course ultimately teaches us, is that we don't have to be a victim of death. We can consciously go through the appearance of having died, but in truth, we are, letting go of the body, surrendering the body, and consciously stepping into that next level of awareness or awakening. So this has, been a very interesting theme for me, because I've had 3 different occasions in this lifetime where I technically died according to medical science. And every time I came back, I had just empty spots rather than, oh, I went to heaven and I saw all my friends and we hung out, had a cocktail party. But I saw those empty spaces and realized I just fallen asleep. I was just not there for a few minutes or a few days or a few weeks. But the reality is that that's something that we can elect to step away from. We don't have to go through that process of going down with the body and being in that empty space, that nothingness, and then awakening out of that and coming back in as an infant and learning all of the laws of the material world that we ultimately have to transcend at some point anyway.
Wow. That's an amazing sharing. Yeah. I think ultimately all healing does come back to this idea of death, because what is sickness but a little death? And I think it might be described that way in the Course. It's this idea that something is wrong, and that if God is perfect love, then somehow God is absent. Because how could perfect love have anything to do with any sort of pain or suffering? And I think what you and I are talking about here is really a complete reversal of a thought system. It's not just about fixing up the problems in our life or patching over what feels like an issue or two that we're struggling with. It's about completely removing all idea of loss and fear, suffering and sadness, about completely stepping into a place of joy and truth and happiness and oneness. And that happens at the same time as we're letting go of the fear, because the fear is sort of like a cover over the light. When we remove the cover, then we come back to the light. We've always been the light. We've just kind of forgotten it. Or as you were saying, we fell asleep. And then when we come back, to our reality, then we know that there really is no cause for fear. There's no cause for sadness. There's no cause for grief of any kind. And I think there's another section in here where Jesus is kind of talking about the different ideas of healing and how they fit together. He says, "No teacher of God should feel disappointed if he has offered healing and it does not appear to have been received. It is not up to him to judge when his gift should be accepted. Let him be certain it has been received and trust that it will be accepted when it is recognized as a blessing and not a curse." So one of the things that he talks about in here too is that when people are not ready for healing, that it may be threatening to them. It may feel like healing is kind of like shaking the foundation of their thought system, which ultimately it does remove the foundation of the ego's thought system. And while we're attached to that, healing can seem like a threat. Healing is very natural. So where it's not occurring, it means that in some way we are resisting it. We are not wanting it to happen. And the nice thing about healing is it's always very gentle. So it's not going to push us. It's not going to force itself on us. It's only going to wait for our welcome. And as we continue to look at what's going on inside of us, the welcome gets stronger and stronger until it's all that we want.
Yes, and then the flip side of that is when you consciously extend healing to another, are you able to just put it there, place it there in front of them, and walk away? Because in this passage that we're looking at today, it says, "It is the relinquishing of all concern about the gift that makes it truly given." And it is trust that makes true giving possible. So we have to have absolute, trust and faith that every time we have extended a healing thought, a loving thought to those around us, whether they appear to have received it or not is absolutely irrelevant. and it shouldn't even be a concern because, again, that's the nature of the ego. The love is always a barter with the ego. I'll give you a pound of love if you'll give me a pound of love. Whereas we're being taught in the Course in Miracles that we give love to everybody we encounter, and we don't worry about whether or not in this very moment they're conscious of it or whether or not they can embrace it. But at some point, as this whole illusion of time is being resolved, that act of love will impact them, and they will not only benefit from them, from all of these different things that you're putting out there, but they will extend them, they will share them, they will put them forward in their own way. So ultimately, you're going to, leave a blessing with somebody, and eventually that blessing is going to touch a gazillion other souls that exist within this one unique phenomenon that is the sonship, that is the Christ.
I love that idea. I love that we don't really know the impact of every kindness that we have, of every beautiful heart space that we share with someone. We don't really know where it's going and what it's affecting. I think it really connects into that holographic nature of the universe, that really we're all contained in every person, and also every person is contained in everyone else. It's like, we're all in everything. So there is healing here for everyone in any instant that one person really chooses kindness and really expresses generosity. The other thing that comes to mind is when I was training about how to read tarot cards, I was in a presentation that was being led by a teacher, Sonia Choquette. And that was one of the big ideas that she had, was that you really need to be totally unattached to what you're sharing with someone. You can't judge if they received it or if they appreciated it, if it was right or wrong. You just have to be the vessel to let it come through. And that's sort of a requirement for these kinds of sharings and connections. And what I found is that sometimes people really don't accept what we're sharing, that the times in the readings something will come up and people will say, no, I think you're mixing your signals, I think maybe you're picking up on someone else. And then a year later, all of a sudden I talk to them, are like, oh my God, do you remember the reading you gave me? I told you were totally wrong, and then this happened, that happened. And I was like, a lot of times I don't really remember. I'm like, oh, okay, that's awesome.
Yes, and that definitely is one of the first things that you really notice as you start reading, is that you just go with it. You just let it happen. It's a natural process. But even if the individual receiving the reading is in complete resistance in the moment, there is some point in time where that sharing will have some valid effect for them. They'll be able to use that somehow in their own progress. So absolutely, stepping away from trying to energize things through the ego's attachment to them is one of the most important major steps we can make in how we approach people and how we share with people.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know, this feels like maybe a good place for us to wind down. How are you feeling, Chris?
Oh, absolutely. I think we got it nailed down from about 6 different directions here. In the holograph, within the holograph.
That's right.
But next week we'll be looking at, should healing be repeated? And so that's something to ponder over the next week.
Yeah.
How many times can you fix the same old broken bone?
And if you were listening today, you probably already have an idea of what we'll be sharing around that topic.
Absolutely, yes. And so for all the people who do experience the video, we do encourage you to share it with others, because we're trying to get the word out in our own humble way. And do leave comments, do share it, because things are amping up. We are coming to a next level of awakening here in this material world.
Yeah, and I'm glad to be awakening with you, Chris. This has been a beautiful sharing. Every time we get together, I feel more and more grateful for this message that we're bringing, and knowing that as we give it, the message is first intended for the messenger. So I always get so much from these calls, and I always feel lighter and I don't know, like I have more insights after we talk. So I just wanted to express that gratitude and appreciation as well.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's, totally reciprocal. Even an old dude like me can learn from you young whippersnappers, and I very much love and appreciate all of the things that you share as we come together each week.
All right. Well, I love you, Chris.
I love to you, uh, and we'll chat in 7 days, if not sooner. Who knows?
Sounds good. And love to everyone out there too. And we'll see you next week.
Take care, Barrett.
All right. Bye.